There's an old saying, fish and visitors stink after 3 days. It's a cliche, sure, but cliches often hold a concentrated dose of truth. We all want to be generous, to offer a helping hand, especially to family. It's the right thing to do. But generosity has a dangerous undertow. It creates an expectation. And when that expectation morphs into entitlement, the dynamic shifts. You stop being a host and you start being a hostage. The invisible lines we draw around our personal space vanish, and the sanctuary you call home suddenly feels like occupied territory. And reclaiming it? Well, that always comes at a cost. It was a Thursday night. The bar was humming, not packed, but busy enough. A woman took a seat right in the middle of the bar. Mid-30s, perhaps. She looked polished, the kind of person who has their life together. But her eyes told a different story. They were wide, frantic, and bloodshot. The look of someone who hasn't had a peaceful moment in a very long time. She ordered a gin and tonic, extra lime. When I slid it over, I noticed her hands were shaking. She drank half of it in one go, like a person emerging from a desert. She closed her eyes and let out a long, ragged breath. She stared at the glass, tracing the condensation with her finger. Finally, she looked up at me, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and sheer disbelief. Is it possible to feel homesick when you're sitting in your own living room? Is it normal to fantasize about running away from the house you own? I wiped down the counter, keeping my tone neutral. It's more common than you think, I said. Usually means something or someone has overstayed their welcome. She gave a short, sharp laugh. Overstay doesn't even begin to cover it. We're running a non-profit hotel for the world's most entitled relatives, and I just became the Wicked Witch of the West. Her name was Chloe. The story started 7 months ago. Chloe and her husband Mark were living a quiet, comfortable life. They loved their home. It was their sanctuary. Then the phone call came. It was Mark's cousin, David, and his wife, Lisa. They were in a bind. Their apartment building was being sold. They hadn't saved any money, and they needed a place to crash. Just for a couple of weeks. 3 at the absolute maximum, just until they found a new apartment and organized the move. Mark, being a good guy with a soft spot for family, didn't hesitate. Chloe was more cautious. She knew David and Lisa's reputation for drama and financial instability, but she agreed. 2 weeks, she stipulated, and they have to actively look for a place. The first few weeks were fine, a little crowded, but David and Lisa were on their best behavior. They were grateful, they apologized for the intrusion, they occasionally helped with the dishes. They talked constantly about the apartments they were viewing. But as week 3 turned into week 5, the dynamic shifted. The gratitude was replaced by complacency. The apartment hunt seemed to stall, and the best behavior, that evaporated entirely. They started sleeping until noon. They'd take over the living room every night, watching movies at full volume, leaving a trail of snack wrappers and empty glasses in their wake. They stopped asking to borrow things and just started taking them. It was the accumulation of small disrespects that started the slow burn of resentment. They'd finish the coffee and not make a new pot. They'd use all the hot water. They started receiving packages at the house, mountains of them, as if this was their permanent address. The financial burden started to sting, too. The grocery bills had doubled. The electricity bill was astronomical. And David and Lisa, they hadn't contributed a dime. They were always waiting for a check, always dealing with a banking error. Excuses were plentiful, but cash was scarce. Chloe tried to talk to Mark about it, but he was conflict averse. "They're going through a tough time, Chloe. We can't just kick them out. They're family." "Patience," Mark kept saying. But Chloe's patience had worn thin. By month 4, the house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a source of constant stress and anxiety. Chloe felt like she was constantly cleaning up after 2 grown adults, subsidizing their lifestyle while they made zero effort to improve their situation. The breaking point came when they announced they were adopting a dog, a Great Dane puppy. Without asking, they just brought it home one afternoon, a massive, untrained animal that proceeded to chew on the furniture and use the expensive area rug as a toilet. Chloe was livid. She confronted Lisa, her voice shaken with rage. Chloe's voice, sharp, angry, and incredulous. "Are you out of your mind? You bring a massive dog into my house without even discussing it? This is not your home." Lisa looked genuinely offended by the outburst. She crossed her arms, her expression hardening into a mask of self-righteous indignation. "Geez, Chloe, calm down. It's just a dog. We needed some emotional support. You're so uptight about everything. It's stressful living with you." Uptight. The word hit Chloe like a physical blow. She was working overtime to pay for the roof over their heads, and they had the audacity to call her uptight. That night, Chloe gave Mark an ultimatum. Chloe's voice, cold, firm, and final. "It's them or me. I mean it. 30 days or I'm moving out." Mark, finally seeing the devastation in his wife's eyes, realized the gravity of the situation. He sat David and Lisa down the next day. He was firm, clear, and unequivocal. 30 days, no extensions. The reaction was explosive. Tears, accusations, guilt trips, they laid it on thick. How could he be so cruel, so heartless? They had nowhere to go. They were victims. They were family. Mark held his ground, but the atmosphere in the house turned toxic. The next 30 days were a cold war. David and Lisa became sullen, hostile, and passive-aggressive. They deliberately made more noise, more mess. They seemed determined to make Chloe and Mark as miserable as possible. The deadline came and went. They were still there. They called Mark's bluff. Chloe realized that words were useless. Action was required. She consulted a lawyer. She started the formal eviction process. It felt surreal, serving eviction papers to family members in her own home. But she had no other choice. When the papers were served, the nuclear fallout began. Mark's family exploded. His mother called, hysterical, accusing Chloe of tearing the family apart, of being a materialistic monster who cared more about her furniture than her own blood. The wider family mobilized, painting Chloe and Mark as the villains in this twisted drama. They conveniently forgot the 7 months of freeloading, the disrespect, the dog. They only saw the cruelty of the eviction. The eviction process was ugly and drawn out. But finally, the day came. David and Lisa were forced to leave. They didn't go quietly. They left the guest room in shambles, holes in the walls, stains on the carpet, a final act of spiteful defiance. As they walked out the door, David turned to Mark, his face twisted with hatred. "I hope you're happy, Mark. You chose her over your own family. Don't ever call me again." The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was heavy and profound. They had their house back, but the victory felt hollow. The cost was devastating. Chloe finished her drink, her eyes staring blankly at the rows of bottles. She looked hollowed out, exhausted by the ordeal. "So, here I am. My house is quiet, but it feels tainted. My marriage is strained, and my husband's entire family despises me. They genuinely believe I am a terrible person. And maybe they're right. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have sacrificed my own comfort for a little longer. Was I the asshole? Was it worth tearing a family apart just to have my living room back?" She shook her head, the confusion and guilt overwhelming her. "But then I think about the entitlement, the utter lack of respect, the way they took our kindness and weaponized it against us. If I hadn't drawn the line, where would it have ended? When does generosity become enabling? And when does self-preservation become cruelty?" What do you say to that? It's a question that cuts to the heart of what it means to be a family. The tension between obligation and boundaries, between kindness and self-respect. There are no easy answers, only choices, and the consequences that follow. And sometimes, the price of hospitality is everything you have. So, I'm handing the verdict over to you. Was Chloe the asshole for evicting her struggling relatives and causing a massive family rift, prioritizing her own comfort over their needs? Or was she justified in reclaiming her home and her sanity from guests who had severely overstayed their welcome and abused her generosity? Pull up a stool, pour yourself something strong, and tell me what you would do.